Hello there, welcome back to Enigmatic Retro Rewind. I'm here with Johan again, and we're going to talk about Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension.
Yes!
Because we recently screened it at Cult Film Club at Derby Quad.
Yeah, we did.
So, let's talk about this then.
Right, so there's a reason why I picked this film. It is almost the pure definition of a cult movie.
Right.
Because it is a movie that is literally what's been nicknamed by many people as nerd art.
Okay. I'll let you explain that. I don't know whether I agree with that after seeing it, but I'll let you carry on for now.
Well, Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension has already had a bit of a production history, which I kind of said so in the intro. It is one of those kind of films that was, at the time, almost destined to be a cult film. It had already, starting off by the bat, had a lot of production issues, especially by one particular producer who was also running MGM at the time, Pilgrim. It was going to be a movie that was already planned on having sequels and a franchise. And then a producer comes in who was already famously renowned to be sort of a really rubbish producer, had no faith in the project and said, now we're going to do one movie, I want you to cut the budget in half, and we've got to have to work what you got, and removed scenes that could have actually had backstory, which is something I think we'll talk about why this movie may not go down with a lot of people very well. And then you're left with this movie where it's a big combination of incredibly nerdy stuff.
Salutations, great Buckaroo Banzai.
And references. But I don't think many people got it.
No. Well, for me, right, this... I thought this was going to be right on my street.
100%.
Because it is so 80s. It's 80s sci-fi. It's like 80s view of the future kind of thing. Like, you know, like the whole Blade Runner thing does that. And there's elements that you said that they were going to have the cinematographer Blade Runner.
They did. They had a few shots were shot by the cinematographer of Blade Runner.
So there are elements in the film, like the nightclub scene, that's very similar to that kind of vibe. And it's right on my street, and I was thinking, I'm going to love this. But I didn't like it at all. I'm afraid.
No.
Right, and I don't know. I'm a bit confused of how I can really dislike this movie, because I really love Peter Weller, I love Jeff Goldblum, I love Christopher Lloyd.
Yes.
They're all in there.
John Lithgow, there's loads of good people in this movie.
They're all playing characters that annoyed the hell out of me. Right, Peter Weller's the main character, he's Buckaroo Banzai.
Yes.
I hate characters, right, that are too good at everything. That's why I'm not a Superman fan.
Hey, Jim! Whoa! Excuse me. That's a bad outfit!
I like vulnerable characters as my protagonist, and I like they might have a strength within them that you discover. When you get a character presented to you that's amazing and loads of things right at the beginning, I'm like, well, you then. I'm like,
did you instantly just diss it?
Yeah, and the annoying thing as well, I really love music movies, right? Like one of my favourite, it's not a lot of people's favourite movie because it's kind of a crap movie, but I love Prince's Purple Rain, right? And there's a whole like vibe of that. When you watch the trailer, you see the clips from the nightclub scene, and you're thinking, oh, there's going to be loads of music stuff in this movie. There's going to be loads of scenes.
There's only one. There's only one scene with the Hong Kong Cavaliers as a band. And
I didn't instantly connect with Buckaroo as a cool character, as was explained.
British Power present the single night only. The one switch on, the one, the only. Keep using Buckaroo Banzai in the Hong Kong cafe.
I didn't agree with all the fandom that was surrounding him.
The man is good at everything. He is an inventor. He's a philosopher. He's a kung fu expert, but we never get to see his kung fu, by the way. You know, he's a musician. He's a top surgeon. He is everything under the sun, which I can get. He's too good at everything, and that could be a problem. But I feel like this is where I feel like I've watched it several times and I've grown to love this film, because you have to kind of see it in a very weird way.
Okay.
The way I see it is, right, this movie, the reason why it's so cult is because this movie doesn't hold your hand. at all. No. Doesn't explain anything. Because there is no audience surrogate. No. Have you noticed that? Like, there's always, in most other movies, there's always like an avatar to represent the audience. It's like, who are these people? And gives them a backstory or anything. In this universe, because Buckaroo Banzai is already so famous and the best person on the planet, it would be weird if someone said, who is this Buckaroo Banzai who happens to be famous than everyone else?
Yeah.
And so it feels out of place. So because of that, it doesn't explain diddly.
No.
Who are the Hong Kong Cavaliers and why are they so good at everything? Why is Jeff Goldblum, aka New Jersey, dressed as a cowboy? Who are these characters that we never exist? Why is there a watermelon there?
Why is there a watermelon there?
I'll tell you later.
It doesn't explain it.
You see, I'm a big fan of, like, exposition dumps. I would have loved it if that was in there.
Yeah.
What I thought this movie was going to be.
Yes.
I thought it was going to be, but I didn't think it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be bad. But I thought I was going to be on board with the
silliness,
the silliness of it, and like I thought it would be like laughably bad. But it's actually trying to make you laugh. It's not got any unintentional humour. It's trying to be a comedy, and not making me laugh, unfortunately.
I can see where it is, because this is another thing I feel like. This movie is, like I said, it just dumps you into his universe without explaining anything, right? And I kind of realise, after watching it several times over, I know what this is. Remember I told you, like, this movie is almost like a pop culture reference. It's nerd art.
Yeah.
But it's only for a very particular niche bunch of people.
Right.
Because it's referencing the character of Buckaroo Banzai is actually referencing sort of the comic book serials from the 30s, like Doc Savage, the Renaissance man, the man who's always good at everything, right? You've got like the B-movie feelings of the 50s with all, like, you know, with the aliens and everything else, a very B-movie 50s kind of vibe. Yeah. It's very punk rock because in that sort of lie, Peter Weller is acting a little bit like Adam Ant half the time.
Yep.
And it's all this stuff, but if you're not into any of that stuff and you don't know what they're referencing, and even weird things like philosophy and so on and so forth, if you don't get it, you're going to be completely lost. And the first time I watched it, admittedly, I was like, what is this? I don't understand any of it. But then I realised this movie wasn't made for me. So I sat down watching it and realising this is kind of ingenious because I've fallen into the universe and sort of embraced it, washed over me. And I said, you know what? This movie isn't made for me, but I love everything despite of it.
So that's interesting you brought that point up, because I like the idea that it's almost, I imagine that you weren't completely like me, as if like I don't like it at all when you watched it the first thing. You were kind of confused.
I was very confused.
Stop, John Wolfen, before sunset. If you fail, we will be forced to help you destroy yourselves.
I'll tell you, if it ain't one thing, it's another.
I don't understand anything.
But it is interesting that you didn't like love it at first.
No, I didn't. No. This was several viewings of me watching it and realizing I know what this is. This is like again, nerd art. Is if you're very much into these kind of things, you're going to instantly fall in love with it because you know all the pop culture references.
Right.
And I think doing a little bit of research, I've got into some. There's a really good video on YouTube called by YouTube series called Brows Held High, and he actually broke down Buckaroo Banzai.
Right.
I said, okay, and he said, like, this is what the Marvel movies do. So elaborate for a second. Let's say you've never watched a Marvel movie in your life.
Yeah.
And suddenly your first film is Captain America: Civil War. Do you understand? Would you understand any of it?
No. Yeah. I can see what you.
And I think that's what that is. But the sad thing is, Buckaroo Banzai was never turned into a franchise because obviously there was a tease of the sequel, which did turn into a book. But you know, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai versus the World Crime League, and I was wondering if we had that sequel, if it ever got successful and turned into a sequel, would it have filled in all these weird gaps that would have been mentioned in the first film. Like, do we actually find out where the watermelon was there? Or do we actually find out who this Pesos guy is? Or do we actually learn a bit more about Buckaroo? Like, with flashbacks and stories and a villain that makes sense and everything else.
Thing is with the watermelon bit,
yeah,
I think that could just be a throwaway joke anyway. It could be literally like, I like the idea of it, I'll tell you later kind of thing.
I love that
what's
joke.
that watermelon there for? I explain later. I like the idea of it being unexplained because it could just be a joke, you know.
It is, but that's the thing. I think it's the best way to sum up the movie. The movie is a giant in-joke.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the in-joke, you're not going to like it. But this the thing is, I didn't like the in-joke until I watched it several times over and finally understood what the in-joke is, and even then I'm not entirely sure.
I am fascinated by the fact that you weren't like into it at first, but something pulled you into it to kind of repeat viewings.
Because everything in the movie to a degree screams cool. I should be into it. I should be into like the fashion, like, you know, the fashion in this movie. I'm so into that. I like the quirkiness. I like the hammy performances. I like the attempt at something cool and world building. I love all that. But I was wondering, why is this not working for me? Like, angrily.
See, that's the difference, because if I found it cool and I found it funny, I think I would probably be the same. I'd be intrigued.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's as cool as it thinks it is, or as funny as it thinks it is.
Hey, no. Don't be mean.
And then it just kind of falls flat.
Yes.
For me, I was thinking, like, all these things should work for me, and I was more angry as to why it's not working for me. So I kept, as almost like a means, I started researching it, I started watching it more and more and more, and then I finally got into it, and I said, you know what? I think I got it now. But but no movie should ever be one of those films you have to watch several times to get it. But it's kind of the reason why it's a cult film. It's a movie that's not made for major consumption, but if you do fall into its weird, quirky tones, you've got something there that's really, really cool. The only downside is I don't think this movie's as aged well in the slightest because of all the weird older pop culture references that only a certain very niche group would now be into now, and it's not even my generation.
No. Do you think it's also a product of its time in terms of like, because a few movies back then did that where they immediately thought that we're going to make loads of these.
Yeah.
We're going to set it up, and it's almost like they've got disposable income for like the for the series. Because they're thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to get loads of money for this, so let's just kind of go with it. Because I remember like even Mac and Me sets up a sequel at the end, doesn't it?
Oh god, I remember that. Yeah,
Mac and Me will return.
Will return, and this one was, we are going to do the World Crime League, you know. But I mean, here's the thing, right? The thing that people most remember is the ending.
Yeah.
Which is not even the ending, it's the credits. This is the thing, everyone remembers, oh, this happens in the movie. It happens in the credits. The cool, everyone's alive and everyone's walking cool down the way, doing to the theme tune, and everyone remembers that bit of the movie and not pretty much nearly everything else.
Well, that is such an iconic moment, and they knew it, because in the early trailer, like I think the first trailer, the most of the trailer is just that. Yeah. It's like it's pretty much the whole thing is that, and now and again you get some little cutaways from the film, but it's mostly just the strutting.
And that's the thing, the movie is selling you a sense of cool. And that's why, again, I was almost genuinely annoyed in myself that I wasn't into it. Because like, this movie is selling me cool, and I can know why you could be cool, but why aren't you working for me? Like, I almost like been pummeled into submission. It's like, why is this not working for me?
Because of the way marketing works nowadays with films, people will be doing that kind of parodies of that kind of like dance, like strutting on TikTok.
Yeah, they would do. That would be the publishing thing. You can imagine everyone strutting, doing they will call it the Buckaroo, the whole strut. it's a thing there that I think this is the movie such of its time, but also very far ahead of its time. I feel like it's very far ahead of its time, but also kind of stuck in itself. It is weird void that makes it a really interesting curiosity. And it's quite nice that when we went to the screening that everyone felt the same way. It's like, I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know if I really like this or not, or I just really think this movie failed on every level. But it's something there, and I'm quite, and you know, it was really fun to actually do that in the Cult Film Club and give you the opportunity to look at it. So, Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. Exactly. How many of you have seen it already?
Well, at the beginning, when you introduced the film, you said how many people have seen this and how many haven't. What was the ratio of the hands that went up then?
Only a few people have seen it beforehand, and the reason why is because I think people might have heard of Buckaroo Banzai because of Ready Player One.
Get out of town! Buckaroo Banzai? I like it! I like Buckaroo Banzai!
Yeah.
Because it was saying like, oh, I like Buckaroo Banzai, and it is again this very niche 80s character that not a lot of people would have heard of, but it was in a big budget movie, and said, oh, now we need to watch it again. So there's a lot of people who watched it or got reintroduced to this movie because of Ready Player One.
Yeah.
So there was a small handful. Everyone else has not seen this before. They may have heard of it, or they might have seen the end credits, but never seen the full film.
I was aware of the title. That's it. I've heard that before. You know.
It's a great title, by the way. It's another coolish reference title. It's like a nerdy title. But yeah. But you know what's interesting is we're going to be doing another screening very soon around March time. March 11th we're planning on doing this in. And I think arguably it might fall into the same trap of Buckaroo in some cases. Because we're going to be doing Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Prepare to feel the wrath of the League of Evil Exes.
League of Evil Exes? We are dating?
I guess.
Does that mean we can make out?
Sure.
I mean, some people would not think this was a cult movie because some people love this film so much that they have the illusion that it was a successful film.
It flopped terribly in the cinema, and it only got really big through DVD and Blu-rays and through midnight screenings after the fact. It's the only reason why it's so big, and it's also, I feel like, the reason why I'm so excited for it is to show it because it feels a little bit like I'm worried this is going to fall under the curse of Buckaroo, where it's so particularly niche and so particularly kind of level of nerdy that if you're not on board with it, which I know many people who watched that movie and said, I don't like any of this, what's with this anime video game nonsense, why is Beck on the soundtrack, who is these people, why are all these millennials assholes, you know?
Wait! We're fighting over Ramona?
Didn't you get my email explaining the situation?
I skimmed it.
You will pay for your insolence!
Which, unless, you know, is aimed at a very particular group. It's a thing.
I think it'll go down well because in my experience with that film, you've either seen it and loved it or not seen it. I don't know people who have seen it and not liked it.
And here's the thing, I don't think many people have seen that on the big screen. So it'd be really, really nice to see that movie on the big screen, because when I saw it on the big screen, I adored it. But I was in a cinema with just me and my friend. 1 week in, cinema was empty.
Yeah.
And that just summed it up. So it is a cult film because it was such a big financial flop that Edgar Wright almost got scared, got cold feet, and decided to not try anything new and went back to the Cornetto trilogy because he was worried that here's this thing out of that and it flopped terribly. So he decided to go back and finished and did The World's End after that, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait for that one. So we'll see how that all turns out.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's the sort of the end of our review of Buckaroo. What do you think? Have you seen Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension? Did you like it, or were you just as confused as nearly everyone else? Leave a comment down below.
Okay, see you next time, guys. Take care.
Adios.